Imagine sitting in a courtroom, the air thick with tension, as a young woman confidently strides to the stand, her demeanor oozing entitlement. She's there to defend herself, but her attitude suggests she believes the rules don't apply to her. Across the room sits Judge Williams, a seasoned and respected black judge known for his no-nonsense approach and unwavering commitment to justice. The case seems straightforward at first glance, but as the proceedings unfold, it becomes clear that this is no ordinary trial. What starts as a routine hearing quickly spirals into a dramatic showdown, testing not just the patience of the judge, but the very principles of fairness and equality. The stakes are high, the emotions are raw, and the verdict? Well, let's just say it's not what anyone expected. The story begins with a simple traffic violation, a speeding ticket to be exact. But for Emily Carter, the young woman at the center of this drama, it's anything but simple. Emily, a 22-year-old college student from a wealthy family, has always lived a life of privilege. She's used to getting her way, whether it's through her charm, her family's influence, or simply her refusal to back down. When she's pulled over for going 20 miles over the speed limit, she doesn't think much of it. After all, she's never faced real consequences before. But this time, things are different. She decides to fight the ticket in court, convinced that she can talk her way out of it. What she doesn't count on is Judge Williams. Judge Marcus Williams is a man of principle. With over 2 decades on the bench, he's seen it all. Defendants who lie, lawyers who twist the truth, and cases that push the boundaries of right and wrong. But he's also a man who believes in second chances and the power of the law to bring about change. His courtroom is a place where fairness reigns, and he's not afraid to make tough decisions, even when they're unpopular. When Emily walks into his courtroom, he immediately senses her arrogance. She's dismissive, rolling her eyes at the prosecutor and interrupting the judge himself. It's clear she thinks she's above the law, and Judge Williams isn't having it. As the trial progresses, the tension between Emily and Judge Williams grows. She tries every trick in the book, pleading ignorance, blaming the officer, even suggesting that the judge is being unfair because of her background. But Judge Williams remains calm, his patience seemingly unshakable. He listens carefully to her arguments, asks pointed questions, and gives her every opportunity to present her case. Yet, with each passing moment, it becomes more apparent that Emily's sense of entitlement is clouding her judgment. She's not just fighting the ticket, she's fighting the idea that she should be held accountable at all. The courtroom is packed, and the atmosphere is electric. Everyone can feel the clash of wills between the entitled young woman and the steadfast judge. The prosecutor presents the evidence, clear and undeniable. Emily was speeding, and the officer's dashcam footage proves it. But Emily refuses to back down. She accuses the officer of targeting her, claims the footage is doctored, and even suggests that the judge is biased against her because of her race and social status. Her words are sharp, her tone defiant, and the room holds its breath, waiting to see how Judge Williams will respond. Judge Williams leans forward, his expression unreadable. He's heard enough. In a calm but firm voice, he addresses Emily, pointing out the flaws in her arguments and reminding her that the law applies to everyone, regardless of their background. His words are measured, but there's an edge to them, a warning that her behavior is crossing a line. Emily, however, doesn't take the hint. She fires back, her voice rising as she accuses the judge of being unfair and dismissive. The tension in the room is palpable, and it's clear that something has to give. Just as it seems like the judge is about to deliver his verdict, Emily drops a bombshell. She reveals a piece of information that no one saw coming, a twist that changes everything. The room erupts in murmurs, and even Judge Williams seems momentarily taken aback. What could she have said to shake the unflappable judge? The stakes are higher than ever, and the outcome of the trial is suddenly anything but certain. As the judge calls for a brief recess, the camera pans to Emily's smug expression and Judge Williams's thoughtful gaze. What will happen next? Will justice prevail, or will Emily's entitlement tip the scales in her favor? The answer lies in the shocking verdict that's about to be delivered, but you'll have to wait for the next part to find out. This is a story about power, privilege, and the pursuit of justice. It's a reminder that no one is above the law, but it's also a testament to the strength and integrity of those who uphold it. As the tension mounts and the stakes grow higher, one thing is clear: this courtroom drama is far from over. So stay tuned, because the verdict is coming, and it's one you won't want to miss. As the courtroom settles into an uneasy silence during the recess, all eyes are on Emily Carter. Her revelation hangs in the air like a storm cloud, heavy and unpredictable. What could she possibly have said to make even Judge Williams pause? The spectators exchange glances, whispering theories, but no one has the answers. Meanwhile, Emily sits back in her chair, a faint smirk playing on her lips. She's confident, maybe even a little smug, as if she's just played a winning card in a high-stakes game. But what exactly is her game, and how far is she willing to go to win? To understand how we got here, we need to rewind a bit. Emily's life has always been one of privilege. Born into a wealthy family, she's grown up with the kind of advantages most people can only dream of: private schools, luxury vacations, and a safety net that's always there to catch her. Her parents, successful entrepreneurs, have always been quick to bail her out of trouble, whether it was a failed exam or a minor scrape with the law. Over time, Emily has come to expect this kind of treatment. She's used to getting her way, and when she doesn't, she's not afraid to push back. Hard. But this time, things are different. The speeding ticket might seem like a small thing, but for Emily, it's become a symbol of something much bigger. It's not just about the fine or the points on her license. It's about control. She's tired of being told what to do, tired of feeling like she's just another face in the crowd. So, when she's pulled over by Officer Daniels, a seasoned cop with a reputation for being by the book, she sees it as an opportunity to make a stand. She argues with him on the side of the road, demanding to know why he's targeting her. When he calmly explains that she was speeding, she scoffs, accusing him of having nothing better to do. Her tone is dismissive, her attitude defiant, and it's clear that she's not going to let this go without a fight. Fast forward to the courtroom, and Emily's defiance has only grown. She's convinced that she can talk her way out of this, just like she always has. But Judge Williams isn't like the others. He's not swayed by her charm or intimidated by her attitude. He's a man who's seen it all, and he's not about to let anyone, no matter how entitled, undermine the integrity of his courtroom. As the trial begins, he listens patiently as Emily presents her case, her arguments growing more outlandish with each passing minute. She claims the speed limit signs were unclear, that the officer was biased, and even suggests that the dashcam footage might have been tampered with. It's a bold strategy, but one that's clearly backfiring. Judge Williams, however, remains calm and composed. He's not here to play games, he's here to uphold the law. And as he listens to Emily's increasingly desperate arguments, it's clear that he's not buying what she's selling. But just when it seems like the verdict is a foregone conclusion, Emily drops her bombshell. She reveals that she has evidence that could potentially exonerate her. The room erupts in murmurs, and even Judge Williams seems momentarily caught off guard. What could this evidence be? And why is she only bringing it up now? As the recess drags on, the tension in the courtroom continues to build. Emily's lawyer, a sharp and experienced attorney named Sarah Mitchell, huddles with her client, trying to make sense of this new development. Sarah has been through countless trials, but even she's struggling to keep up with Emily's unpredictable behavior. Meanwhile, Officer Daniels sits quietly, his expression unreadable. He's confident in his case, but even he can't help but wonder what Emily's next move will be. And then there's Judge Williams, who's now reviewing the new evidence in his chambers. Whatever Emily has presented, it's clearly significant enough to warrant a second look. But here's the thing. Emily's revelation isn't just about the speeding ticket. It's about something much bigger, something that could potentially change the entire course of the trial. As the minutes tick by, the speculation grows. Could Emily have uncovered some kind of misconduct on the part of the police? Or is this just another one of her attempts to manipulate the system? Whatever the case, one thing is clear. This trial is no longer just about a traffic violation. It's about power, privilege, and the lengths people will go to protect their own interests. As the recess comes to an end, the courtroom fills with a sense of anticipation. Everyone is on edge, waiting to see what will happen next. Judge Williams returns to the bench, his expression as unreadable as ever. He looks at Emily, then at her lawyer, and finally at Officer Daniels. The room holds its breath as he prepares to speak, but instead of delivering the verdict, he does something unexpected. He calls for a brief adjournment, citing the need for further review of the new evidence. The decision is met with a mix of relief and frustration, but one thing is certain: the drama is far from over. As the spectators file out of the courtroom, the buzz of conversation fills the air. Everyone has an opinion, but no one has the full story. What is Emily's evidence, and how will it impact the trial? The answers to these questions are still unclear, but one thing is certain: this case is about to take a dramatic turn, and when it does, the consequences will be felt far beyond the walls of this courtroom. So what happens next? Will Emily's evidence hold up under scrutiny, or will Judge Williams see through her tactics and deliver a verdict that no one saw coming? The stakes are higher than ever, and the tension is palpable. As the trial continues, one thing is clear: this is a story about more than just a speeding ticket. It's a story about justice, accountability, and the power of the law to bring about change. And as the drama unfolds, one question remains: who will come out on top? The answer is coming, but you'll have to wait for the next part to find out. The courtroom feels like a pressure cooker as the trial resumes, the air so thick with tension it's hard to breathe. Every seat is filled, and even the standing room at the back is packed with onlookers eager to see how this drama will unfold. Emily Carter sits at the defense table, her earlier smugness replaced by a nervous energy. She keeps glancing at her lawyer, Sarah Mitchell, who's doing her best to stay composed. Across the room, Officer Daniels sits with his arms crossed, his jaw tight. He's been through countless trials, but this one feels personal. And then there's Judge Williams, his presence commanding as ever, his sharp eyes scanning the room as he prepares to continue the proceedings. Everyone knows something big is about to happen. They just don't know what. The first to speak is Sarah Mitchell, who rises to address the court. Her voice is steady, but there's an edge to it, a hint of the pressure she's under. She begins by outlining Emily's new evidence, a series of documents and recordings that she claims prove her client's innocence. The evidence, she explains, shows that the speed limit signs in the area where Emily was pulled over were not only unclear, but had been reported as defective months earlier. She also presents a recording of a conversation between Emily and a city official, in which the official admits that the signs were a known issue but hadn't been fixed due to budget constraints. The room erupts in murmurs, and even Judge Williams leans forward, his interest clearly piqued. This isn't just about a speeding ticket anymore. It's about accountability. And it's clear that Emily's team is aiming for much bigger stakes. But the prosecution isn't about to back down. The district attorney, a seasoned lawyer named James Carter, no relation to Emily, rises to his feet, his expression stern. He argues that even if the signs were unclear, Emily was still driving recklessly. He points to the dashcam footage, which shows her weaving in and out of traffic at high speed, and asks the court to consider the danger she posed to others on the road. His words are sharp, his tone unyielding, and it's clear he's not about to let Emily off the hook. The tension between the two sides is palpable, and the room feels like it's on the verge of exploding. As the arguments continue, the stakes grow higher. Emily's evidence has shifted the focus of the trial, turning it into a battle not just over a traffic violation, but over systemic issues and personal responsibility. The media, already buzzing with speculation, latches onto the new angle, and soon the case is making headlines across the country. Social media is flooded with opinions, with people taking sides and debating the merits of Emily's claims. Some see her as a whistleblower, exposing a broken system, while others view her as a manipulative opportunist, trying to avoid the consequences of her actions. The debate is heated, and it's clear that this case has struck a nerve. Meanwhile, outside the courtroom, the drama continues to unfold. Mia Torres, the journalist covering the trial, is digging deeper into Emily's story. She's uncovered a series of emails between city officials discussing the defective signs. And she's also learned that Emily's family has a history of using their influence to sway legal outcomes. The more she digs, the more complicated the story becomes, and Mia knows she's onto something big. But as she prepares to publish her findings, she can't shake the feeling that she's missing a crucial piece of the puzzle. What is Emily really after? And how far is she willing to go to get it? Back in the courtroom, the tension reaches a breaking point as Judge Williams calls for a brief recess to review the new evidence. The room erupts in chatter as people speculate about what will happen next. Emily sits quietly, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, her earlier confidence now replaced by a flicker of doubt. She knows this is her last chance to turn things around, but she also knows that the stakes are higher than ever. Across the room, Officer Daniels watches her closely, his expression unreadable. He's been a cop long enough to know when someone's hiding something, and he can't shake the feeling that Emily's evidence isn't the whole story. As the recess drags on, the tension in the courthouse grows unbearable. Emily's parents, Richard and Linda Carter, wait anxiously in the lobby, their faces etched with worry. They've always been able to protect their daughter, but this time, they're powerless. Richard paces back and forth, his phone buzzing, constantly with messages from his lawyer, while Linda sits quietly, her hands trembling. They both know that whatever happens next will change their lives forever. Finally, the courtroom doors open, and the spectators file back in, their anticipation palpable. Judge Williams takes his seat, his expression as unreadable as ever. He looks at Emily, then at her lawyer, and finally at Officer Daniels. The room falls silent, every eye fixed on the judge as he prepares to speak. But instead of delivering a verdict, he does something unexpected. He calls for a final round of arguments, giving both sides one last chance to make their case. Decision is met with a mix of relief and frustration, but one thing is clear: this case is far from over. As the arguments begin, the tension in the room reaches a fever pitch. Sarah Mitchell rises to her feet, her voice steady but filled with urgency. She argues that Emily's evidence proves her client's innocence, and that holding her accountable for a system's failure would be a miscarriage of justice. Her words are passionate, her tone compelling, and for a moment it seems like she might just sway the court. But then James Carter rises, his expression grim. He argues that Emily's reckless driving endangered lives and that no amount of evidence about defective signs can excuse her behavior. His words are sharp, his tone unyielding, and it's clear he's not about to let Emily off the hook. The room is electric with tension as the arguments come to a close. Everyone knows that the next words out of Judge Williams's mouth will determine the outcome of the trial. But as he leans forward, his expression thoughtful, he does something no one expects. He calls for another recess, citing the need for further deliberation. The decision is met with a mix of groans and gasps, but one thing is certain: the drama is far from over. As the courtroom empties once again, the questions linger. What will Judge Williams decide, and how will his verdict impact not just Emily, but the broader issues at play? The answers are still unclear, but one thing is certain: this case is about more than just a speeding ticket. It's about power, privilege, and the lengths people will go to protect their own interests. And as the drama continues to unfold, one question remains: who will come out on top? The answer is coming, but you'll have to wait for the next part to find out. As the courtroom empties for yet another recess, the tension doesn't ease, it intensifies. The spectators, reporters, and even the legal teams are left buzzing with speculation. What could possibly be taking Judge Williams so long to deliberate? The case, which started as a simple traffic violation, has spiraled into a high-stakes battle over accountability, privilege, and justice. But just when it seems like the drama has reached its peak, a new development sends shockwaves through the courthouse. Mia Torres, the journalist who's been tirelessly covering the trial, receives a tip from an anonymous source. The message is cryptic but urgent. Check the city's maintenance logs for the speed limit signs. There's more to this story. Mia's heart races as she pulls up the documents on her laptop. At first glance, the logs seem routine. dates, times, and notes about repairs. But as she digs deeper, she notices something strange. Several entries from the past year have been altered or deleted, and the timestamps don't add up. Her fingers fly across the keyboard as she cross-references the logs with other public records. What she uncovers is explosive. Evidence that the city knowingly ignored the defective signs for months despite multiple complaints from residents. But that's not all. Buried in the files is a name that makes her blood run cold. Richard Carter, Emily's father. Mia's mind races as she pieces together the implications. Richard Carter, a wealthy businessman with deep political connections, had been involved in a city contract to replace outdated traffic signs. The project was delayed indefinitely due to budget constraints, but the logs suggest something far more sinister. Could Richard have influenced the decision to delay the repairs, putting public safety at risk to save money? And if so, what does that mean for Emily's case? Mia knows she's onto something big, but she also knows she needs to tread carefully. If she's right, this story could blow the case wide open and expose a scandal that goes far beyond one speeding ticket. Baksu. Inside the courtroom, the tension is palpable as the trial resumes. Judge Williams takes his seat, his expression as unreadable as ever. He looks at Emily, then at her lawyer, and finally at Officer Daniels. The room falls silent, every eye fixed on the judge as he prepares to speak. But before he can say a word, Sarah Mitchell rises to her feet, her face pale but determined. "Your Honor," she begins, her voice trembling slightly, "we have just received new evidence that we believe is crucial to this case." The room erupts in murmurs, and even Judge Williams raises an eyebrow. Sarah hands over a folder to the bailiff, who passes it to the judge. As Judge Williams opens it, his expression shifts from curiosity to concern. The folder contains the documents Mia uncovered, the altered maintenance logs, the deleted entries, and the damning connection to Richard Carter. Sarah argues that this new evidence proves not only that the city was negligent in maintaining the speed limit signs, but also that Emily's father may have played a role in delaying the repairs. The implications are staggering. If the city knowingly ignored the defective signs, then Emily's speeding ticket, and potentially countless others, could be the result of a systemic failure. And if Richard Carter was involved, it raises serious questions about corruption and abuse of power. The prosecution is quick to respond. James Carter rises to his feet, his face flushed with anger. He argues that this new evidence is irrelevant to the case at hand, and accuses the defense of trying to distract from Emily's reckless behavior. "Your Honor," he says, his voice sharp, "this is nothing more than a desperate attempt to shift the blame. The fact remains that Emily Carter was driving dangerously, and no amount of paperwork can change that." His words are forceful, but there's a flicker of unease in his eyes. He knows this new evidence has changed the game. Judge Williams listens, carefully, his expression thoughtful. He knows this case is no longer just about a speeding ticket. It's about accountability, transparency, and the integrity of the justice system. But he also knows that he can't let the trial devolve into a witch hunt. He calls for another recess, this time to review the new evidence and consider its implications. The decision is met with a mix of frustration and anticipation. Everyone knows this case is far from over, but no one knows where it's headed next, as always. The courtroom empties once again. The stakes feel higher than ever. Emily sits at the defense table, her hands trembling. She knew her father had connections, but she never imagined they could be tied to something like this. Across the room, Officer Daniels watches her closely, his expression unreadable. He's been a cop long enough to know that the truth is rarely simple, and he can't shake the feeling that there's more to this story than meets the eye. Outside the courthouse, Mia Torres is already drafting her article. She knows this story is bigger than Emily's trial. It's about corruption, accountability, and the lengths people will go to protect their own interests. But as she types, she can't shake the feeling that she's only scratched the surface. What else is Richard Carter hiding? And how far will he go to protect his family's reputation? The questions linger as the trial heads toward its climax. What will Judge Williams decide? And how will this new evidence impact the outcome? The answers are still unclear, but one thing is certain. This case is about more than just a speeding ticket. It's about power, privilege, and the pursuit of justice. And as the drama continues to unfold, one question remains. Who will come out on top? The answer is coming, but you'll have to wait for the next part to find out. The courtroom is silent, the kind of silence that feels heavy, like the air itself is holding its breath. Judge Williams sits at the bench, his face a mask of concentration, as he reviews the new evidence. The altered maintenance logs, the deleted entries, the connection to Richard Carter. It's all laid out in front of him, a tangled web of negligence and potential corruption. The tension in the room is unbearable, every eye fixed on the judge as he prepares to deliver his verdict. Emily Carter sits at the defense table, her hands clenched so tightly her knuckles are white. Across the room, Officer Daniels watches her, his expression unreadable. Even Sarah Mitchell, Emily's lawyer, looks tense, her usual confidence replaced by a flicker of uncertainty. This is it, the moment everything has been building toward. Judge Williams finally looks up, his gaze sweeping across the room. After careful consideration of the evidence presented, he begins, his voice calm but firm. I have reached a decision. The room seems to lean forward as one, hanging on his every word. He pauses, letting the tension build, before continuing. The defense has raised valid concerns about the condition of the speed limit signs and the city's failure to address them. However, this does not absolve the defendant of responsibility for her actions. Reckless driving endangers lives, and that cannot be ignored. Emily's face falls, her earlier hope crumbling as the judge's words sink in. But then he adds, that said, the systemic failures highlighted in this case cannot be overlooked. Therefore, I am dismissing the charges against Ms. Carter on the condition that she completes 100 hours of community service and attends a driver safety course. The room erupts. Some people cheer, others groan, and the reporters scramble to capture the moment. Emily looks stunned, her emotions flickering between relief and disbelief. Sarah Mitchell places a reassuring hand on her shoulder, but even she seems surprised by the verdict. Across the room, Officer Daniels nods slowly, his expression thoughtful. He may not agree with the decision, but he respects the judge's reasoning. For a moment, it seems like the drama is over, but then Judge Williams raises his hand, silencing the room once more. There is one more matter to address, he says, his tone grave. The evidence presented today raises serious questions about the city's handling of public safety and the potential involvement of outside influence. As such, I am referring this matter to the State Attorney General for further investigation. The room explodes again, this time with gasps and murmurs. Richard Carter, sitting in the back, goes pale. He knew this case could have consequences, but he never imagined it would go this far. Emily looks at her father, her eyes wide with shock and betrayal. She had no idea his connections ran so deep, or that they could come back to haunt her like this. The media frenzy outside the courthouse reaches a fever pitch as reporters scramble to make sense of the judge's announcement. Mia Torres is already on the phone with her editor, her voice urgent as she outlines the breaking story. This isn't just about Emily anymore. It's about corruption, accountability, and the pursuit of justice. As the courtroom empties, the mood is a mix of relief and unease. Emily walks out with her lawyer, her head held high but her mind racing. She may have avoided a conviction, but the fallout from this case is far from over. Her father's reputation is in tatters, and the investigation into the city's handling of the speed limit signs is just beginning. For the first time in her life, Emily realizes that privilege and connections can only get you so far, and that true accountability comes with a cost. Officer Daniels watches her go, his expression thoughtful. He knows this case has changed things, not just for Emily but for everyone involved. The justice system isn't perfect, but today it worked. Not just to hold one person accountable, but to shine a light on a much bigger problem. As he walks out of the courthouse, he feels a sense of quiet satisfaction. This isn't the end of the story, but it's a step in the right direction. Outside, the media circus is in full swing. Cameras flash. Microphones are thrust into faces, and reporters shout questions at anyone who will listen. Mia Torres stands at the center of it all, her notebook in hand, and a determined look on her face. She knows this story is far from over, and she's ready to follow it wherever it leads. As the sun sets on the courthouse, the drama of the day begins to fade, but the impact of the trial will be felt for a long time to come. For Emily, it's a wake-up call, a reminder that actions have consequences no matter who you are. For Judge Williams, it's a reaffirmation of his commitment to justice, even in the face of complexity and controversy. And for everyone else, it's a story that will spark conversations about power, privilege, and the importance of holding those in authority accountable. But just when it seems like the story has reached its conclusion, a final twist emerges. As Mia digs deeper into the city's maintenance logs, she uncovers something no one expected, a name that wasn't on anyone's radar. Buried in the files is a reference to a high-ranking city official who had been quietly pushing to delay the repairs, not for budget reasons, but to create a crisis that would justify a lucrative contract for a private company. The official's name? James Carter, the same prosecutor who had been arguing against Emily in court. The revelation sends shockwaves through the city. James Carter, a man who had built his career on fighting for justice, is now at the center of a corruption scandal. The media pounces on the story, and soon the case is making national headlines. For Emily, it's a bittersweet victory. She may have avoided a conviction, but the fallout from the trial has exposed a web of corruption that goes far beyond her speeding ticket. And for Judge Williams, it's a reminder that the pursuit of justice is never simple, but it's always worth fighting for. As the dust settles, one thing is clear. This case was never just about a speeding ticket. It was about power, privilege, and the lengths people will go to protect their own interests. And while the verdict may have been surprising, the real shock was the truth that came to light. A truth that will change lives and spark a much-needed conversation about accountability and justice. The story may be over, but its impact will be felt for years to come. The fallout from the trial was swift and far-reaching. Within days of Mia Torres's explosive article hitting the press, James Carter, the prosecutor who had argued so vehemently against Emily, found himself at the center of a scandal that would end his career. The revelation that he had been involved in delaying the repair of the speed limit signs, not for the public good, but to secure a lucrative contract for a private company, sent shockwaves through the city. His resignation was immediate, and the state attorney general's office launched a full investigation into the corruption allegations. For Emily, it was a strange kind of vindication. She had walked into the courtroom fighting a speeding ticket and walked out having exposed a web of deceit that went far beyond her own case. But the victory felt hollow. Her father's reputation was in ruins, her family's name dragged through the mud, and the weight of everything that had happened left her feeling more lost than ever. Emily's community service began the following week. She was assigned to a local nonprofit that helped underprivileged kids, a far cry from the privileged world she had always known. At first, she resented it, the early mornings, the menial tasks, the way the other volunteers looked at her with a mix of curiosity and judgment. But as the days turned into weeks, something shifted. She found herself connecting with the kids, listening to their stories and realizing how much she had taken for granted. For the first time in her life, she wasn't just Emily Carter, the entitled rich girl. She was just Emily, and that was enough. It wasn't an easy transformation, but it was a necessary one. By the time her 100 hours were up, she had gained something she never expected, a sense of purpose. Meanwhile, Richard Carter was facing his own reckoning. The investigation into the city's handling of the speed limit signs had uncovered a trail of corruption that led straight to his doorstep. His connections, once his greatest asset, were now his biggest liability. He stepped down from his position on the city council, his political career effectively over. For Linda, Emily's mother, it was a devastating blow. She had always stood by her husband, but the revelations about his involvement in the scandal tested even her loyalty. The family dynamic shifted, the once unshakable bond between them now strained by betrayal and regret. But in the midst of the chaos, there was a glimmer of hope. For the first time, Richard seemed willing to confront his mistakes and take responsibility for his actions. It wasn't redemption, but it was a start. Officer Daniels, the cop who had pulled Emily over that fateful day, found himself reflecting on the case long after the trial ended. He had always believed in the system, in the idea that justice was blind and fair. But the trial had shown him that the system was far from perfect. It was flawed, messy, and often influenced by power and privilege. Still, he took solace in the fact that in the end the truth had come to light. Justice might not always be swift or straightforward, but it had a way of finding its path. He returned to his job with a renewed sense of purpose, determined to do his part to make the system better, one case at a time. For Mia Torres, the journalist who had broken the story, the trial was a career-defining moment. Her article sparked a citywide conversation about corruption, accountability, and the need for transparency in government. She received accolades for her work, but the real reward was knowing she had made a difference. The story wasn't just about Emily or James Carter or the defective speed limit signs. It was about holding those in power accountable and giving a voice to those who had been silenced. Mia continued to dig into the case, uncovering more layers of corruption and ensuring that the investigation stayed in the public eye. Her work was far from over, but she knew she was on the right path. As for Judge Williams, the trial was a reminder of why he had chosen this path in the first place. The law wasn't just a set of rules, it was a tool for change, a way to level the playing field and ensure that everyone, no matter their background, had a fair shot at justice. The case had tested his patience and his principles, but it had also reaffirmed his commitment to the job. He knew the system wasn't perfect, but he believed in its potential to do good. And as long as he was on the bench, he would do everything in his power to uphold that belief. The city itself was changed by the trial. The scandal sparked a wave of reforms, from increased oversight of city contracts to stricter enforcement of traffic safety regulations. The defective speed limit signs were finally repaired, and the public outcry led to a broader conversation about the importance of accountability in government. It was a reminder that change was possible, but only if people were willing to fight for it. As the months passed, life slowly returned to normal, or at least, a new kind of normal. Emily completed her community service and driver safety course, but the lessons she learned stayed with her. She enrolled in college, choosing to study social work, a decision that surprised everyone but felt right to her. She wanted to make a difference, to use her privilege to help others, rather than exploit. Her relationship with her parents remained strained, but there were moments of connection, small steps toward healing. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. The trial had been a turning point for everyone involved, a moment that forced them to confront their flaws, their mistakes, and their values. It was a reminder that justice wasn't just about verdicts and sentences. It was about accountability, integrity, and the courage to do what was right, even when it was hard. And while the road ahead was uncertain, there was a sense of hope, a belief that no matter how flawed the system might be, there was always a chance to make things better. As the sun set on the city, casting a golden glow over the courthouse, it felt like a new chapter was beginning. The drama of the trial was over, but its impact would be felt for years to come. It was a story about power and privilege, about corruption and accountability, but most of all, it was a story about people, flawed, complex, and capable of change. And in the end, that was what made it unforgettable.